for having me today. When you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I also would like to thank you because your club has donated 7,500 to our Rotary Club, and this money is all going to the cathedral. In fact, you actually donated directly to the cathedral refugee fund. So I would like to extend the thanks from the cathedral to your club for this donation. I'd like to share with you a few things. First of all, you have donated, but I want to emphasize what is this money good for? Why do we need to support the Syrian refugees? How can we help them? And what are the advantages and some of the challenges? And how can clubs and communities continue to help Syrian refugees? So a little background, the whole situation started in Syria in March of 2011, when small children started to write on graffitis some things about the president and needing reforms. This was dealt with by extreme force to what was going on, and it led to a huge uprising. So refugees started to flee because of these kind of issues, but the problem has not become a worldwide global problem until we reached the April of 2013 and exasperated in June of 2014 because ISIS, which is the Islamic State, State of Iraq and Syria, or IS or ISIL, some people like to call it, that's when they built a state and they declared Kirkuk is a city, and also started to intensify the fighting with the Kurdish forces. So all of that, what led people from Syria to flee by the millions. So before it was in the thousands that we're talking about, the first camp in Jordan that started. So now where are we at? So the Syrian refugees have went from, I know there's a laser beam, so the Syrian refugees went mainly to Turkey. There's now 2.5 million, by the way, in Turkey. Then the refugees went also in the millions to Lebanon. Now around 2 million refugees in Lebanon. They went to Iraq, went to Jordan, and to Egypt. At the moment, there is a problem of 12 million people who are refugees in neighboring countries and displaced within Syria. About 7.5 million are internally displaced. They cannot be in their homes for fear for their lives. And around the neighboring countries, there is 4.5 million refugees. So all these refugees have great needs to be met. Just to put it into some terms for you, they say that this crisis is the biggest international crisis and human crisis since the Second World War. The biggest one before that was the Darfur crisis, and in all measure, you'll see that the Syrian crisis had exceeded that by so many numbers. The people who are killed, almost 3,200 killed, 1.5 million disabled, 4.5 million refugees, 7.5 million displaced. And if you compare that to the refugee crisis and the Darfur crisis, in 2010, which was considered by the UN one of the biggest crises, this even exceeds these numbers. Try to also compare it to other humanitarian needs in the world. The Syrian crisis has produced 12 million people who are in need. If you compare that to the Haiti crisis, 3.5 million. Hurricane Katrina, 1.7 million. Indian Ocean tsunami, 5 million. So by far, it definitely exceeds. That's why there is such a need at the moment to help the Syrian refugees. And that's why sometimes when people are asking, what about other refugees? They are still being helped, but there is such a dire need to do something about the Syrian refugees. One of the biggest issues that they are facing is hunger. And if we're talking about a family of 4 right now in Lebanon, they are living on a $13 in refugee camps. And the camps does not provide food, so they have to go fetch for food. You have also poverty, so there is a right of child abuse, rise of child labor, and so on and so forth. One of the biggest casualties, and the first casualties of any war, is education. You have elementary school children who hasn't been educated for the past 4 years. They can't even go to schools in Syria. These are like the refugee ones. Also in Syria they can't go because they get text message from fighting groups threatening on Facebook that they're going to bomb this school or that school, and they do actually follow up with their threats. So people have been so afraid to send their kids to school. Health in the refugee camps, also sanitary problem. There are camps that have more than 2,000 people, like the camps in Lebanon, the worst one in Lebanon, Zaatari camps. And sometimes they're not sharing lots of sanitary facilities there. Then children have not been vaccinated. There is a rise of tuberculosis, even polio, which the Rotary Club is known to have worked on for so many years, almost to eradicate it. It's coming back in refugee camps. So there is now also a need for Rotary to start to support the polio eradication in refugee camps. That's beside all the psychological effects that you can imagine from the trauma of the war. The global consequences are also huge. There are millions of refugees that are trying to flood these kind of issues, and what they are doing is either going by land, trying to reach Europe, or they're going by sea. Now, the ones that are going by land, they're about 34,000, because it's much difficult to cross by land than to try to take that journey. It's a 14 minutes apparently journey by boat, but we're not talking about even boats. We're talking about like rubber things, like as big as a small rug that they're trying to jam 30 people in these boats. The smugglers take on each person, they have to pay $1,000. Sometimes on infants they say, okay, we'll take 500. So global consequences in an economic one, because there are mafias. One that are forging documentations in order for people to reach Europe. Some that are just smugglers who don't care if people live or die and just shipping them on these kind of boats to go to Europe, just to make money. In Germany already we have 1.5 million Syrian refugees, and the numbers keep on increasing to the point that now you have rising Islamophobia, rising racism, rising hate crimes, and there are parties in Europe, the right-wing parties, are so much on the rise. The popularity of Angela Merkel has dropped by 40% just from the beginning of 2016 because of the refugee issue. So when people are taking these trips, like these journeys by sea, they are putting themselves in such a big risk. Just in the past year alone, in 2015, there were close to 3,000 deaths by sea or perished by sea. The total so far exceeds 4,000 people who have died by sea, and most of them are children. So we have to do something. So the first part was, why do we need to help? So I guess now you have an idea that we really need to help, but who is helping? So besides the government, there are so many people who are acting on the ground here in Canada. There are Canadian NGOs who are helping on the grounds there. So if you're talking about Red Cross, Shelter Box, Doctors Without Borders, CARE, Oxfam Canada, they're all working on the ground in these countries, the neighboring countries. Then you have here in Canada academia. There are universities like Ryerson University, there are universities like Ottawa University, Algonquin College, and all of these. They are offering scholarships for refugees who are coming here, and I'm actually working with a family. Now we just enrolled her in these programs because you cannot, she came with a bachelor's degree, but it's very expensive to go and do another bachelor's degree. At Algonquin, they're paying for all her education to get a diploma because she works with child care education. And that prepares her for real life, and that's the next step. We have the refugees here. We really have to work on resettling them, finding them a job and some trade and ways to work and use their skills. So we have also civil societies. These are taking the bulk of this resettlement process. 80% of them are working on helping and sponsoring refugees. Churches, more than mosques and synagogues, just because they are what we call the agreement holder, sponsorship agreement holder, and the churches has renewed always this agreement. Plus, they had the experience of bringing Kosovan refugees before and Somali refugees earlier, and from Afghanistan, also from Iraq. So they have this experience and the infrastructure to do so. Then you have also service providers, Jewish Family Center, YMCA. They work very much with labor. So if you want to find, for example, if you want to help people, guide them to jobs, that's the best way for trades like construction and so on and so forth. They try to put them on the job market as fast as possible. There are something called refugee hubs. It's lawyers who are providing free consultations in order to bring the families of the refugees that are already here and they want to link with their families. There are Catholic Center of Immigration. They're mostly working with youth. They have youth programs, so the refugee youth, when they come, they try to integrate them. They have basketballs, they have soccer games, and so on and so forth. The Rotary Club, of course, we are very much effective in the fundraising portion because we have collaborated. So our 3 Rotary clubs, I would say, the Rotary Club of Ottawa, your Rotary Club now, and the Rotary Club of South Ottawa, they are all working now together by sponsoring 2 families, with raising the funds enough to sponsor these families with the help of the Christchurch Cathedral that we are working with. If you have heard, did many of you heard about Refugees 613? It's a program. It's not actually to raise fund as much as it's a coordination effort. So what they do is they try to find who wants to volunteer and displace them with sponsors. For donations, if you're interested in donating, so the Kanata food cupboard is very good to donate food. Matthew's house, if you have furniture that you want to donate, particularly for refugees, that's where I would go. Snowsuit fund, it's for clothes, and Carty House for household materials. They take all these stuff and they distribute it among sponsors around Ottawa. Then there is a new program now starting by Syrian Canadian dentists. It's called Canadian Dentists for Refugees. So if you have any dentists or hygienists who also wanna volunteer to help, that would be a great place to do it. What has the Canadian government do so far? They have done, okay, so we are having 2 programs here. There are those that are sponsored refugees, so privately sponsored refugees or the blended sponsored refugees. Those are the ones that half the government sponsor financially and the other half is the church, for example, like our family that's coming, that's how they were sponsored. In that sense, the refugees come and they find a lot of help. There's a community and volunteers. We have now 20 to 30 volunteers trying to help that one family. Every family takes almost 20 volunteers to resettle them and help in that first year. Because there are so many things to do, and I'll go over it soon. But there are also those government-funded refugees or government-sponsored refugees. The problem with that is they come, but they don't have these sponsoring, these churches, the volunteer, the setup to help them. So what happens is they end up jamming them either in hotels until they find more permanent places for them, or now they are finding like maybe we'll put them at military bases, but I feel the government hasn't quickly retracted on that option. So far they are trying to find for them more permanent places to live, but they feel a bit lost and lonely. They are not as well prepared here to integrate in society because there is no community support, and that's what the sponsors are really here for. If you want to know more about the numbers, the exact number, there's a great program provided by the Government of Canada, the Refugee and Immigration website. You just have to go to the hashtag on Google, Welcome Refugees. And there is a city map that tells you how many refugees have arrived so far to Ottawa and what kind of refugees they are. So the last data I have for Ottawa, we had 760 government-assisted refugees, or the BVOR, which we are doing, and there are 144 privately sponsored refugees. I think the aim for Ottawa is to reach 1,400, to settle 1,400 refugees. Then, economically, is it wise to sponsor refugees? Because so many people we have been hearing complaining about the numbers, but in fact, it's gonna cost 1 billion over the next 6 years to resettle these refugees. The bulk of it will be in this year, and after that it will become less and less. But if you look at the history of the other refugees that came to this country, the Lebanese refugees have done extremely well because they came here in the 60s and 70s due to the civil war in Lebanon. And they have become leaders, basically, business leaders in the communities. There is another very good example is the Vietnamese refugees who came here in the 70s. Unemployment rate of the Vietnamese refugees is 2.3% lower than Canada as a whole. So they're really doing well. And they relied less heavily on social assistance than the general population. 1 in 5 has started their own businesses. Another source also is saying how much immigrants we still need, because our tax base needs not to only be managed but to be expanded in order to do well economically. And the what is it called, Conference Board of Canada report saying that we have to increase the number of immigrants that are coming to this country from the current 250,000 to 350,000 in order to do well within the next 20 years. The other thing is we need to also work on quelling this black market, because there's the identification thing, as I said, and the smugglers have even been reaching to Canadian shores. There are a network of mafias that are now trying to smuggle refugees all the way here to Canada. So they are working on it, and today in the news they have declared that there are few ships that are going to be joining NATO forces. They're going to send them on the shores of Turkey as a surveillance in order to stop this mafia from what they are doing and sending these kind of refugees. They're sending refugees basically sometimes to their own death. So these are the programs that are provided by the government so far up to 2016. What we were doing is that one, the B4. So 6 months will be sponsored by the government, and the other 6 months will be sponsored by the sponsor themselves. So that's why we were raising the money. And the other one was the government-assisted refugees. That was the one where the government does everything, but they bring them and they don't have the community help that we are providing through the churches. Now they added something else. The government just recently decided that these systems are not enough or not working very well, because there are people here who have families, so they want to sponsor them, they want to help them. And since they're already in the community, they can provide great support for these families to come. We don't have to rely only on volunteers or on the government to do it, but the families themselves can do it, but they don't have the fund. So they created something called the Family Lifeline. This is a very new program that was released by the Minister McCallum actually recently, and in it they are coordinating those who want to sponsor their families and the sponsoring groups who want to sponsor families. And that's gonna, I think, make things a lot easier and smoother to integrate them. But what does it mean to sponsor refugees? So we have a family, for example, who's coming here, 6 or 4 months. It takes about 30,000 to sponsor, that's the minimum, to sponsor a refugee for 1 year. But that 30,000, you don't have to pay it all. It's half by the government and half, it ends up in reality 2/3 by the sponsor and 1/3 by the government. That's why we needed to raise at least 60,000 for these 2 families, plus a contingency plan as well. And when you get a house for them, which we did now, the house is ready and everything is ready. We made the application, but we don't know when they're gonna come. So they told us that any moment, it could be actually tomorrow, that we get a phone call that they're coming tomorrow on a plane. And we have to be ready. So we have already the house ready. Sorry, no problem. So now we have the house ready for them, and we found that is another problem here, affordable housing. So in order to find a house that's big enough for a family of 6, they have 4 children, this family that's coming. The children are 2, 4, 7, 6 and 7. And one of them, the one who's 7 years old, has a psychological problem. Apparently he wakes up the trauma effect. He wakes up with nightmares and screaming and so on. So we need also to find some social work or psychologist to help him with that. In order to find affordable housing big enough to host this family, we found one in Kanata. And that's why also I'm here today, because we need volunteers also to help us in the resettlement process in Kanata. So I'll be providing some help because I have a big car to take them to doctors and so on. I have found a family doctor who is willing to take care of the children. We're still working on trying to find a family doctor who will see the parents. So that's one thing. Most of the refugees who come here, they have dental issues. The refugee family that I'm volunteering to help right now, for example, had a root canal problem and it's very costly. But we found dentists who are willing to do it for free. So we're trying to find, and there are people who want to, but the more we have, so if you have a network, if you know people who are dentists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and all of that, these are the people that really need to help. The other thing we are looking for at the moment is also jobs. So if you know of businesses who can help, that would be great. These are the teams that the cathedral have organized so far. We have 5 teams, and the reason is every team is responsible for a certain task. Of course, we overlap sometimes, but we try our best to organize it. We have the administration and budget team. Then we have the second one is the fundraising. But so far, we are doing well, but we're trying to even get more as a contingency plan. Also, we want to help these 2 families who are going to come to integrate afterwards to find them an education or something like that. So we need to invest a little bit also of money afterwards. Then we have a team 3. It's a family support for housing and finances. This is the one that found the housing, that signed the lease, so on, and that collected donation and furniture. So we have been doing that as well. Then they did something else. This is the one that will also go with the family. Once they're here, they have their social insurance card. We have to take them immediately to the bank to open a bank account for them. We have to take them to start opening all these accounts for them. And this is the group that will help with that. That's what we need volunteers with. So if you have the time, the energy, and you live in Kanata, and you are willing to help us, please do, because please give me your name, number, and availability so that we can put you on a list that we can call up on you if you would like to help these family resettle. We have also one that is orientation and social cultural support. Of course, I'm part of that because of the language, but if you know other people who speak Arabic, we need them to take them around, show them the city, and try to do something fun for the children. So it's not because they're going to be so overwhelmed, they will come and immediately it's going to be all paperwork and this and that. So we want to also try to do some fun activities for the children. The family I'm working with, they took them to Sherbrooke, sometimes they take them tobogganing, sometimes they went sliding, so they do lots of things. Even they involve them in the cadet, because somebody who works in the cadet. So if you are involved in things that are fun, that you think that these young children will like, also think about that and let us know. The last team is working on health and education and employment. So I'm also working on that one. If you can give advice, there are 2 refugees that I'm working with now. They are young students. One of them was studying law in Syria. He had only 1 course left to finish, but he just couldn't do it anymore. It was the blockade and everything, and his life was in danger. And for his family, he left everything. So now we're working on equivaling his degree, finding which courses can be equivalent, and he will have to redo the whole thing. We're also trying to raise money for him to go to university. Sometimes you have to fill applications for them. Just filling application for people who don't speak the language is a challenging thing. So if you have the time to just come for an hour, sit with them to fill for them an application where they can get social welfare from the government, saying that could help them, but they don't know about, and we probably know about it because we are in the system and we know all of these things. So these are the things that they need help with. So just to recap quickly, where we need the most help with at the moment is business owners, any kind of jobs. Like we have some refugees. The father that I'm working with is working 3 days a week at independent store at night. He works the whole night to just make extra for his living, because as being sponsored is not enough, and that first year goes by so fast. Like in a second, now he's almost 10 months here in Canada. So within 2 months, that's it. There's no more sponsorship. So what is he gonna do after? The money that the government gives him is really not enough. So they're really starting to think about the future, and that's why his wife is now looking to go back to Algonquin to get a degree. He's looking for part-time jobs. So that's the help we need. Then the other thing is English. They can do anything without English. So you remember that guy, what he said? The first thing they need is English. The second thing is English. Third thing is English. And if you speak the language, just going there and visiting them and speaking with them, the more they practice, the better they get at it. So they're going to be involved in, they're going to be registered in ESL courses. That's like a free government courses, but it's not enough. Even if they go every day, I know this courses myself because I have enrolled when I came here as an immigrant, and my parents enrolled. It's not enough. So we need to visit them and speak as much as possible and teach them English. So if you know people who are good in teaching English as second language, do let us know. Volunteering your time, if you have big vans, it's a family of 6, so just the challenge of taking them to the doctor, that alone, how you're gonna get them all in one car. Yeah, it's gonna be some some challenge because they don't have cars, of course, and the buses in the winter is not always with for young children. It's the easiest way to get them around to doctors and then appointments for their healthcare and their all of that. So, what else do we need? And then, of course, we need money. So donate as much as possible to the Rotary Syrian Refugee Fund, which we started. All the money, 100% of it, goes to the Christchurch Cathedral, and 100% of the Christchurch Cathedral money for the refugees goes to these two families that we are sponsoring. Nothing goes anywhere else. It's just for these two things. Can we help? Well, I always like what Hillary Clinton, since we are fans of Hillary Clinton, I'm going to quote her. You know, she said it takes a village to raise a child. I really think it's taking a village to sponsor a refugee family. And to let you know just a little story, whether we can do it or not, in the 1979, after the Vietnam War, 7,000 Canadian faith and community groups, just like us, okay, they sponsored 30,000 refugees. And thanks to this really grassroots movement, they have helped to settle so many refugees in Canada, and it was a very big success story, these Vietnamese who came here because of this movement. So I definitely think we can do it. And there are many things happening. One of them is I started a campaign. It's #Canadians for Refugees. So I suggest you join the campaign and start off and to say thank you for inviting me. Say thank you for donating to the Rotary Club. I have buttons, the same ones I'm wearing, Canadians for Refugees, that I would like to give you as a gift. I hope you will just wear them. And Eddie, I don't know if you already have yours. Thank you. So even the mayor right now is wearing one because we had an event. So I want to tell you about our event. We had lots of fundraising events. One was last Tuesday, and you were invited to it. I hope you got the invitation. But one was last Tuesday, and in that event was in City Hall. I had invited everyone, and I actually did not know what to expect at that event. We had MP Virani. MP Virani is the one responsible. He is the secretary, the parliamentary secretary for the Ministry of Immigration. He was there. We had MP Karen McCrimmon from Kanata was there because I supported her in her campaign, so she knows what I'm doing and she wanted to show support. She was there. And then we had the mayor who we invited and we were not expecting to come. You have it? Everybody has one? So, the mayor showed up, and to our surprise, we had already a full room of 120 people who showed, even reporters were there. To our surprise, suddenly the minister himself, Mr. John McKellar, was there. And he came and he gave a speech, although we had already a speaker who is also responsible from global affairs. It was a very successful event. We raised a lot of also funds from it, but just the fact that everyone called it like Rotary at its best. So it was a very beautiful thing to see all the people who are supporting us on every level of government. And they're all now wearing their campaign buttons, supporting the Rotary and supporting the Canadians for Refugees. What I'm doing with this, if you are a Twitter feeder, if you go to Twitter, you can go to #Canadians for Refugees, and I'm updating the latest news and research on this topic. So not just like, this person come or this family came, but also good research that can give you good information. I hope with that I have given you an idea of our need and what we can do and what we have done. And I really would like to thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. Thank you.